Good morning. I see that a lot of you are up and awake. Andre from Puerto Rico. Yo soy puertorriqueño, amigo. So welcome to those of you who are on the live stream. And let's go ahead and get underway. And Elflower 1 stars, hello. How are your new fish that you bought? Well, the four fish that I picked up from Live Fish Direct are doing well. The Red Empress is still a little shy and likes to hang out here in these plants, but comes out and eats and has great color and no fin damage. So he's doing great. And the other ones are doing well. I'm going to talk more about that as we go along. The other two fish, the electric blue and also the that large, I guess you would call it like a dragon blood with a white face. They're still in quarantine. They're in quarantine together. I had to put a divider in, but now they seem to be getting along okay. And hello, Carlos. And they seem to be getting along okay, and so I'm not going to, I took the divider out, give them a little more room, let them socialize with each other a little bit. I'm going to keep a close look, a close eye on it, of course. And so all the fish are doing well. I will say this, the dragon blood and the electric blue are not eating as well as I would like them to be eating. And until I see a fish that is eating very well, really aggressively going after their food the way cichlids do, and also showing some attitude, until I see that, that's when I pull them out of quarantine. If they're still acting meek, if they're still hanging around in a corner, if they're slow to go after food, they stay in quarantine. And if they keep doing that, I actually will start a medication treatment, usually a general cure, something like that, a couple rounds of general cure, some water changes, and see if that makes a difference. But that is the criteria. I have to see the fish pretty aggressive and attacking their food and swimming and having some attitude, and only then will I go ahead and put them into one of the main tanks. And usually that's a 4 to 6 week process, sometimes longer. And the only time I made a huge mistake was when I rushed that process. Now, that being said, in full disclosure, I did have a situation where I had to put 4 fish directly into the tank behind me, and fingers crossed, knock on wood, it worked out fine. They're all healthy and great, and they came from Josh Davis over at Live Fish Direct. Because of a variety of circumstances, I put them right into the tank. That is not recommended. I went against my own better advice, but it worked out. Had it not worked out, I would have been the village idiot for quite a while, and so I do not recommend doing that. So just very quickly before we get going here, a couple shout outs, of course, to my moderators, Dennis Reudel. Thank you, Denny, for being there. I appreciate it there, buddy. Kevin, if you're here, I know Kevin Green was going to be in and out because he was going to go to Six Flags with his daughter. And imagine that, wanting to do something fun instead of this. So, and by the way, I noticed Candi just threw up the Live Fish Direct link. You do get a code, I think it's Ben10. There's a code that you can use, and you get like a $15 bag of premium fish food whenever you use that code at Live Fish Direct. I've got several codes. I've got the ben.o and ben10 at Elite Cichlids. That gives you 10%. Anyway, and there's some specials also with Super Cichlids over at Super Cichlids. So there's some codes. If you go to the ben.o.cichlid Facebook page, you'll see that the Facebook page has several codes listed that you can use to acquire products. So a shout out to my amazing moderators, and of course the wonderful Candi, who is the queen of moderators. Thank you, Candi, for always being there. Very appreciated. And a couple other shout outs to last week's super chats. J-Rock, thank you, J-Rock, if you're here. J-Rock, if you don't, you'll see it in the replay if you're not here. Francie Arroyo, thank you so much for the support. King and Queen Cichlids, King and Queen Cichlids, more on them later. Thank you for the super chat. And Cesar Sosa, my friend Cesar, who last week bumped up the record that was previously held, I believe, by what was it called? Jade Green or Jane? I forget the name, but the previous record was broken in super chats by Cesar Sosa. Cesar with a $24.99, and he did it very strategically. He waited right till the very end of the stream and then put in his super chat so nobody could be higher than his. And because he had the highest super chat that broke the record, he ended up getting a mug. So I'm sending him one of these mugs from the channel. It just has the logo on it. So when you watch Coffee and Cichlids, you can be drinking out of the official cup. The stream will be better if you do that, I assure you. So, all right. So thank you, Cesar, for that super chat, and we'll go ahead and this week we'll do something different. This week, if you have the highest super chat that breaks the record, which is $24.99, if you have the highest super chat, you're going to get a $20 certificate from Elite Cichlids, so you can put some plants. You can put some plants in your tank. If you have South Americans or African cichlids, you know that plants are just plants don't work. They just get destroyed. I had some of them in my 60, and they're just shredded. So I thought maybe with the smaller fish, they were actually lingering and lasting. And these are anubias. They're supposed to be bitter and good for cichlids. Destroyed. Those are destroyed. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out what's left in that 60-gallon and probably throw in an Elite Cichlid plant in there as well. But the highest super chat today that breaks the $24.99 record will receive a $20 Elite Cichlids certificate, and just my way of saying thank you to you, and thank you to Elite Cichlids for sponsoring that and offering that. Okay, so let's take a look here at what we have on tap. And today's topic is how many fish can we get into? This is one of the questions I get asked. I get it as a PM, I get it as a message on Facebook and sometimes on YouTube. I get it in comments. I see it a lot at the ben.o.cichlid Facebook group page. How many cichlids can I get into? How many fish can I get into? And a 75, a 100, whatever. And there's that question has so many variables. It's a bit of a fluid situation. And some people throw out things like the 1-inch rule. Well, an inch per gallon, and things of that nature. You hear things like that, and that has to be thought out. You have to really think that out. You have to think in terms of 6 months and a year from now, where you're going to be. If you're going an inch per gallon and you max out your tank, and some of those fish are going to get up to 6, 7, 10 inches, whatever, you're headed for trouble. So I don't really go by that inch per gallon. I tend to stock a tank to the level that I feel comfortable with. It's sort of more of a feel than a rule, and it has more to do with these points, and these are my points. These are what makes sense to me. I certainly want to hear what you think on what you would use as a standard for stocking a tank. Certainly put that in the comments, in the chat, in the comments after this video post to YouTube. You know, I pull from those comments and then I talk about them in the following week, which I'm going to do today. I've got some comments from the prior live stream. I'm definitely going to be bringing up some points on it. But for me, my rule of thumb is this: if you were going to if you want to stock a tank heavily, you know, like have a heavily stocked tank, and I don't like the word overstocked, because when I hear the term overstocked, I think of one of those, you know, like those fish farms where they're selling fish to turn into, you know, like they sell them or they use them for fertilizer or some weird, you know. I have this odd thought. So I'm not going to use the term overstocked. Let's just say a well-stocked or a heavily stocked tank, okay? If you want that, then the keys for you are going to be filtration, fresh water, right, and maintenance. Those three, okay? And again, these are just my opinion. If you stock a tank and you want to stock it heavily, okay, and you're going to need to do something along the lines of upping your water changes, increasing the amount of tank turnover, and just being really, really sharp on it, because a heavily stocked tank, a well-stocked tank, can go south, can blow up very, very quickly, because you have all of these ammonia factories. Now, let's say you come up with a routine, and this routine works for you, and it's been working for you. Keep in mind that as you've been going along, if you've been adding fish and your fish have been putting on size, and you've added perhaps some additional food, or maybe you've started to include frozen, you know, heavy proteins like your frozen krills, you know, things of this nature, you're going to have to change your schedule. You're going to have to change your schedule. You're going to have to increase the percentage, you know, of water that you're pulling out, either by you know, going from 40 to, let's say, 70 or 80% water change, or if you don't want to do that much of a shock all at once to your fish, doing a twice a week or maybe 3 times a week water change. So KG, hey Kevin, you're here. I'm glad you're here. Thank you, buddy. And you're right, feeding is crucial. And of course, as you add stock and as your fish get bigger, of course you're going to start putting more food in that tank, and of course that's going to lead to more waste, you know, more ammonia production, things of that nature. So so the key here is how many fish can I put in a 50-gallon? The answer to that is really a question. The answer is, how often do you want to work on your tank? How often do you want to do water changes? What type of water changes are you going to be doing? How often and how much? What kind of filtration are you going to be running on that tank? And what fish are you putting into it? In other words, are they going to be putting on a lot of size? If you're going to put, you know, I see this 60-gallon tank with 10 baby Venusus in it. I go, well, this person's going to have to cull the herd. They're going to have to get rid of half of those fish, if not all of them, at some point, because they're going to outgrow that tank, and the waste production is going to be enormous. So again, these are things you have to consider. A little bit of research on the front end goes a long way. And this tank behind me, I still feel that, and probably a lot of you would agree, this tank behind me would still be considered a lightly stocked tank by what we normally see, using what we normally see out there in the cichlid world as a standard. We would probably say that this tank is lightly stocked, so or moderately stocked. So, and on this tank I have quite a bit of filtration. And with that in mind, I mentioned king and queen cichlids earlier, and I thanked them for that super chat they did last week. And they had a question that for some reason for some reason didn't get on my radar, even though I noticed when I replayed it that Candi was like pointing it out to me. Hey, you've got a question. And so I'm sorry I missed that, King and Queens. I'm sorry I missed your question. The question was the size of the tank and the filtration on it, and the size on this tank behind me is 150 gallons, and it has a sump underneath that I suspect is probably holding between, depending the level, it's holding between 25 and 35 gallons, maybe 40 gallons of water. So it's about 180 gallon ecosystem, an 80 gallon amount of water. And I have the sump, which is moving 1,900 gallons of water an hour. That's the rating on the Rio pump. But when you have what's called head pressure, the pump moving water up to the tank, you lose pressure. So you're probably realistically maybe 1,300 to 1,600 gallons per hour from the sump. And then I have a Sun 704B full of sponges doing mechanical filtration. And that's rated at over 500 gallons an hour. So, but again, when it's full of media, you're probably more realistically at around 250 to 300 gallons an hour, because those pumps are measured by Sun empty, just how much water flow they're creating without the resistance of having to go through media. So I hope that answers your question, King and Queen. And if you're on the stream, and if you're not, I hope you catch it later, because I did feel bad about missing your question, especially after you attached it to a live chat. I felt very guilty. I mean, to a super chat. I felt very guilty and remorseful. So, all right. So I hope that answers your question. Let me see some of your comments on this stocking issue, because it's a very interesting issue, I think. And let me see what you folks have been saying as I've been talking about this. I don't look at the comments while I'm talking, because they can be very distracting. Good morning to all of you. Said good morning. Boo to you, Rob. And let me see. Let's see. I'm still smiling, Elflower. And she calls me Smiley Guy. That's why I say that. Okay, and let's go down into the subject. And well, let's pick up this question from Javier Roman. Good morning. I had 11 cichlids, and they all died from one day to the next after about 1 month. Any ideas on what could have caused this? Well, certainly it sounds obvious. I mean, it sounds to me like you had some sort of shock. And I mean that literally and figuratively. I mean, you may have had an electrical shock. I mean, that's a pretty major die-off. You may have had an oxygen issue, and were they hanging around the top at all? Were they working their mouths at all? Because that's an indication of an oxygen issue, and that can go south real fast. Ask me how I know. I had it happen to me. And you can have a very massive die-off, but usually you don't lose all your fish. Usually with an oxygen issue, you'll lose the number of fish to the point where the remaining fish can sustain on the available oxygen. And that's why it's such a hard problem sometimes to solve, because you'll have the die-off, and then you'll have like half the fish or a third of the fish are left, and you're thinking, wait a minute, so what is it then? I mean, they all didn't die, so it can really be confusing when you have an oxygen. So I don't know, maybe oxygen, some shock, something in the water. The water treatment was, when you added water, maybe wasn't correct, or maybe the city, added something to the water because of local storms or flooding. Something got into the water, and essentially the fish were killed off. And I hate to hear that. I'm sorry that happened. that's one of those things that make you step back and go, do I want to stay in the hobby? And you're on this live stream, Javier, so obviously you got back on the horse, and I commend you for that, because some people have been knocked out of the hobby by less. And all the water chemistry was perfect. Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know on that one. That's something shocked those fish. There are some diseases I can think of, but none that would sweep a tank out that quickly. I mean, Colomaris is certainly vicious, but it usually takes a little while to spread and kill them off, that kind of thing. I mean, so I mean, that's a tough one. I mean, if your tank is up and running now, I mean, that's one of those things where somebody might even take all the decor out and maybe do almost like a sterilization of some kind and then restart over. I remember way back when John and over at Tank Talk, he had some discus that died off, and he did a full sterilization because he couldn't figure it out. It was just like everything seemed perfect, the water changes were going on right, and his discus died. This is before he took the leave of absence. I remember that happened. And that was a big setback, a very sad situation. And sometimes you never figure it out. You never figure it out. It's just, unless you're a chemist or, you can put things under a microscope. Let's see here. One of my cichlids has colored up. He's making a nest. This is James Mellon. James, let me tell you about fish coloring up and making a nest. Here in the tank behind me, this is a little bit of a preview of an upcoming video. In the tank behind me, you'll notice that the Venusis is right here. This is Vinny Half-Cheek. His name is Vinny Half-Cheek because there was a Colomaris outbreak a few years ago, and he actually lost half of his cheek. His face was gone. You could almost see it down to the bone. I mean, it was horrible. I thought for sure he was going to die, and he made it. He came back, and he became, somebody named him Vinny Half-Cheeks, and somebody from New Jersey. At any rate, he's been the boss. The polystigma knocked off the Autopharynx tetrastigma, was knocked off by the polystigma. Then the polystigma was knocked off by Vinny. And Vinny has run this tank in a very calm and comfortable manner. After a water change, he might get a little fired up. But for the most part, he's run the tank very smoothly, and only, he'll break up fights, and nobody messes with him. Well, guess what? That eye biter became fired up, started digging nests. There's no females in this tank, so he's very optimistic, and has gone like insane. And you can see him here. He chases everybody, and he's trying to claim the entire tank. He's got Vinny here in the corner, trying to be invisible, and the Venusis was almost entirely green, with a blue face, almost like breeding dress 24/7. I mean, he always looked, like beautiful and one color throughout the body, which is common if you're a boss, a tank boss, and the shot caller, right? So the second that the eye biter got over on him, and started pushing him around, he immediately reverted. And I don't know if you can tell by looking back here. He immediately reverted to the more traditional Venusis coloration, the giraffe markings, which I think are beautiful. I think they're very pretty. But he lost that breeding dress, that fired up look that he was carrying when he was the boss. It was almost instant. The second it switched, and I saw that he was running away from the eye biter, his color changed instantly. It was almost like, okay, hey, I give, you're in charge. And so at any rate, we're coming out with a video on that. It'll talk a little bit more about that, but keep an eye on that, James, because you might be in for some very interesting situations. So keep a close eye on that, because they can go crazy. I call it a switch. Cichlids have this little switch in their head, and if it flicks, forget about it. I mean, it's you're off to the races. All right, so Robert Johnson, different types of fish require different stocking levels. Good point, Robert. Like I'd overstock Malawi cichlids but understocked Central and South American cichlids. That now that you say that, it's common for me to see on some of the channels that to see one South American, one South American, one Central American, one big cichlid all by himself, maybe a female in there with a place to hide, but you see that a lot in a big tank. So I get what you're saying, and again, that's an area where I don't have a tremendous amount of experience, even though I'd love to get into that area. I've seen some beautiful South American cichlids, and these viejas I saw the other day at this other channel I was visiting. Oh my God, absolutely gorgeous. I think it was Josh or Jason's fish room, somebody's fish room. Josh or Jason's fish room had these viejas. Oh my God, they're gorgeous coloration. Okay, so good point there. Thank you, Robert. And that one guy, 12986, overstocking is a cop-out. Stock the tank properly, and overstocking isn't necessary. So, yeah, that's why I like to use the term well-stocked as opposed to overstocked, because overstock does imply that you have more fish and more waste production than really your filtration and your maintenance schedule is capable of handling. That's what overstock would mean in my mind. So I get what you're saying. If you want to elaborate on that, on what you mean by the cop-out, I'd definitely like to hear what you have to say about that. But there is one point I think of when you do say that, and that is responsibly having the right combination of fish. Some people will put fish that really should never be together, and then they try and solve the fact that they have the wrong fish in the same tank by putting a ton of fish, hoping that they can spread out all of the violence. And I can see in that sense how that would be a cop-out. So I can kind of track with you on that way. So really making sure that you're stocking fish that really should be living together, and not fish that really should never have gotten together to begin with. Elflower says, is talking about nutrition, using the plants as nutrition, throwing some in there, letting them enjoy it. I could kind of see that, Elflower. A friend of mine once brought some duckweed over. We put some duckweed in, and things started multiplying. And the problem with it that I had, and this is just a matter of choice or taste, I had a problem with just the mess it made. There were plant particles everywhere, and little bits of plant everywhere. And maybe that's because I was using Anubias that is bitter, but they keep trying it and trying it and trying it, like maybe the next bite's going to be okay. And so I had plant pieces everywhere. I had plant pieces on the filter intakes, and so it just became quite a mess. And so I finally decided to go with plastic, with the plastic plants. From Elite Cichlids, which, by the way, for those of you who tuned in late, any super chat that breaks the Cesar Sosa's record of $24.99, the highest super chat that breaks that record will get a $20 Elite Cichlid certificate. So that's pretty good. So thank you, Elite Cichlids, for that. Having Alan Wilson, having proper filtration and doing good maintenance with a heavily stocked tank is key, in my opinion. Exactly. I agree 100%, Alan. And it's that old saying, do the work, right? Do the work. If you, even a moderately stocked tank, if you don't do the work, you skip a water change, you don't maintain your filters, you're headed for trouble, and you're going to have a spike, and a spike of something bad, and you're going to have a die-off. I mean, that's just how it goes. Zen Ginger, the boys are always playing tag behind me, and especially now, because what's happening is the eye biter is trying to corral everybody into this side of the tank. I don't know why, while Vinny, the Venusis, is hiding over here. So, but tag is very common in this tank, and it's something I've gotten used to. Someday I'm going to get when I get into my 70s and 80s, maybe I'll get a planted tank with a bunch of peaceful neons. But then again, would that be as much fun? I don't know. We'll see. Jason, thank you so much for that super chat. Much appreciated, Jason Douglas. And Jameson Rucker, I have a hap that is swimming erratically at the bottom of the tank but hasn't died. Why is this? Boy, I've seen that. And, you know, you get a swim bladder issue. I mean, sometimes a fish can hit another fish and cause damage. Sometimes the fish can bang into something, becomes startled in the night, bangs into something, causes damage in their body, and then proceeds to die slowly. I mean, it's or you may have a. I mean, does he have a sunken belly? Do you see any outward signs of disease? Do you see marks like where you may have been injured or hit by another fish? You know, there's so many factors, and this is why these questions sometimes are very difficult. And I try to help. As I'm sure all of you do from time to time, when somebody reaches out to you and tries and asks you a question, you try to help, but without video and without being able to really observe the situation directly, it's very difficult to make any kind of a sensible determination. And what we're doing is we just sort of throw something out there, and so I don't know. I mean, is he bloated? Is his stomach sunken in? Is he bloated? Does he look fat? Does he? You know, there's a lot of factors, and you know, a lot of factors to consider. So it's a little hard to. But anyway, sorry about that. A1 Cichlids is asking, how many hours do I keep my power heads on? As my stocking levels, A1, as my stocking levels have increased, I've started running my power heads 24/7. So for two reasons. One, because I want the water circulation. I also have them positioned so that they move waste into the intakes of the filters. And also because I've heard that having good water circulation can sometimes help to tone down aggression. I'm not seeing that back here. I don't know. I think they've just become accustomed to the water flow, and I mean that's a 2,000 plus gallon per hour high door third generation Corella powerhead. I don't know if you can see it back here in the corner. That thing is pushing a tremendous amount of water, and you know the fish just sort of hang out in it and go, oh, all right. Sometimes you see them blown. If they catch it sideways, they get blown to the side a little bit, but I think they've just gotten used to it now. And anyway, I'm answering all types of questions, even though I intended to just get into the stocking ones. But let's see. I love to support my local fish store. However, recently he got upset that I bought some fish and something online. I don't know, Jerry. I mean, Jerry Martin, I mean, it is it's certainly your right to purchase from wherever you want to. I mean, I'm not sure if I'd bring up with the local fish store that I'm doing a lot of activity online. I'm not sure if that's something they need to know about, and it would probably only upset them because they see that as a big competitor. A lot of them are probably considering that they're being taken out by online retailers. So it's probably a very sour subject to bring up. So I don't know. I would just go back in there and go, hey, listen, I didn't mean to upset you, but you know, if there's something I want and you don't have it, I'm going to go look for it. And there's you've got some forces at work here. You've got these brick and mortar local fish stores that are trying to make it with the overhead of having a fish store, and then you've got the guys that are working out of guys and gals working out of a garage who don't have that overhead, who write off that part of their living quarters. They can, as a legitimate tax write-off, and ship from there, and so it's an interesting market right now, real interesting market. And I don't think he should have gotten upset with you. I think what he should have said was, are there some things that I could be stocking that you need? And turn it, like one of my sons likes to say, okay, well, what's the takeaway? What's the takeaway? The takeaway for him should have been, hey, look, is there something you need that I'm not carrying? Tell me about it. As opposed to, hey, jerk, get out of my shop. Oh boy, different attitudes, I guess. And I'll tell you something. I'm just gonna be straight with you. Some of the shops out there are pointing the finger to the big box stores and to the online retailers, but a lot of the responsibility lies with the shopkeeper. Is that shopkeeper marketing online? Is that shopkeeper keeping their tanks pristine, so when you walk in, it's very appealing? I don't know. Some of you watched the CK. I did a walkthrough of a store called CK. Man, oh man, I've never seen plants like the plants in that video. Unbelievable. They blew me away. And the tanks were gorgeous. And so those guys are like, they're doing the work. And so when people walk in, they want to buy. And so there's a lot of responsibility to go around here. Let me see. Zen Ginger, bunch of neons. Yeah, neons are peaceful. They're beautiful. They school. They're gorgeous. I think if I wanted a sedative, if I needed a sedative, I'd probably do a disc tank, discus, and with a bunch of neons. And all right. Denny says he picked up a Placidochromis gazelle, redfin borlei, and some more shell dwellers. Nice pickups, my friend. The Placidochromis gazelle, a very peaceful fish, as the name implies, right? Placidochromis. But the gazelle gets this electric blue around the head and the back, and then a lighter blue throughout the body. Gorgeous fish. One of my favorite, a very underrated cichlid, in my opinion. The Placidochromis gazelle. CK video was awesome. Thank you, Alan. I can't get big fish 4-inch plus at any of my local fish stores. Rob, Shannon, Rob, that's what I've been bumping into. I mean, if they have a fish, a large fish, it's usually a fish that somebody has brought in and put it up for adoption. Basically, it's like a rescue fish. So you'll have a big pacu or a giant pleco or a red tail catfish or something that somebody realized, I can't keep this fish anymore. So they take it to the local fish store and say, here, do you want it? You can have it. And those are like a lot of the big fish selections. Now, that's not always the case. In a week or two, I'm going to go down to San Diego. There's a place down there, I think it's called Tropical Fish Depot. Depot, I think it's called. And it's got racks and racks and racks. It's a warehouse of gorgeous fish. And I'm going to share that walkthrough with you folks in a few weeks. I am very excited about going there. San Diego, California, one of my favorite cities in the world. Let's see here. Jackie Moore, I wouldn't have Africans if I didn't go online, some of my beautiful fish are from local sources, but I'll tell you, the real spectacular ones, the ones that you would consider, that eye biter back there that's putting on a show, the red cap, right? My fish, I call them Photoshop. My white lips. These are all fish that were shipped to me. I picked up from other sources, and so let's get into. I want to give you a little bit of a now. Edgar Rivera, Ben, you ever stock any fish against the conventional belief of the norm? Yes, Edgar, I do. I have been attacked. Well, not attacked. Maybe that's a little bit too hard a word. But I have been questioned about putting plecos in with cichlids because of the hard water requirements of cichlids, and how that very often is it's not good necessarily. Some people tell me it's not good for the plecos. The plecos seem to be thriving. They get large. They're active. They hold their own. And so some people go after me on the plecos. And I have people go after me on the clowns the clown loaches that are in the 100, the fish I call Los Tres Amigos. Very early on, there were several people that had clown loaches. They inspired me to go get them. In hindsight, would I do it? I don't know. I don't know if I would do it now, but they're there. They've done well. They hold their own. They eat from the top, just like the cichlids. Probably because they grew up with cichlids, and they probably think they're cichlids. They have those little, they have those barbs on the side of their face, and so if any cichlid messes with the clown, those barbs come out, and they just move their head sideways, and the incident is over. It is over. So they are not messed with, and they've become sort of part of the family, Los Tres Amigos, right? Now, what does that say? Poseway? Posewi. Hi, Posewi. Thank you for that super chat. 55 gallon. No, it's small. Doing research. I like yellow sunshines, ruby reds, lemon jakes, and OBs. With good filtration, etc. How many fish? We're back to the original question, how many fish? First of all, those are good choices. They're all good choices for that size. Lemon jakes are not going to get massively big. Ruby red isn't going to get massive. Yellow sunshines, they're all going to be 4 to 6 inch, maybe. An OB, you can get maybe 5-7 inches with an OB. So those are good picks. You will get to a point, I think, this is just my opinion, you will get to a point, Posiwi, where you're going to start thinking about a 125 gallon for two reasons. One, your fish are going to get big, and two, you're going to want more. You're going to want to throw a fluorescent in there. Gorgeous fish, fluorescent. You're going to want a blue neon. You're going to want a bicolor 500, right? So you're going to want an otter point. These are gorgeous fish, gorgeous. You're going to want to throw them in the mix. And so what's going to happen is you're going to want a 125. So start saving your money. But I would put a canister and an HOB. A canister and an HOB. If you're going to put a bubbler on there, maybe 2 canisters and a bubbler, something to break up the surface, Put the canister outputs so they break up the surface, create some oxygenation. And go 2 canisters or a canister and an HOB. You'll have plenty water movement, plenty filtration. You probably won't even need a power head with a tank that size, because those filters will create a lot of water movement. And but those are good. Your first selections are good. Keep in mind, OBs can be a little aggressive, and so can otter points. Otter points can be a little aggressive, okay? I hope that answered your question, and but I do like your fish selections. So let's take a look at some of the questions that came up previously. And before I do that, I want to give you a little tip. I'm going to be coming up with a video. I'm going to be releasing a couple videos. One of them is the one on the tank boss situation going on behind me. The drama behind me. It's like it's a Halloween horror movie that we have going on. So I'm going to be also releasing 10 tips for crazy color. I did an informal survey, and the overwhelming choice was we want 10 tips. We want 10 tips. Is Cichlid Shack in the house? James, your eye, the eye biter, the F1 eye biter you sent me has just taken over, and you can see he's got poor old Vinny here in the corner, and he's running roughshod over everybody in the tank. So I'm blaming you. I'm blaming you, James Larg. If you folks don't know, James Larg with the Cichlid Shack, top quality fish. And if you're listening, James, I want to talk to you about that Phoenix. I think we talked about a Phoenix a while back. If you've got a big one, I think I may want to get one of those. So let's talk about 10 tips for crazy color, just to give you just to sort of tip my hand a little bit on what I'm going to be talking about. And these are the things you would probably expect. This is an upcoming video. The 10 tips for crazy color. I'm going to talk about pristine water quality, monitored water parameters, good lighting, quality food, females. Men dress their best when there's females. quality food females, proper temp, reduce stress, starting with good stock. Right, James? Start with that F1. Buying in groups and then picking the pick of the litter, right? So you buy a group of fish when they're small, and as they develop, you'll have one that turns out to be spectacular. That's what happened with Photoshop. And proper oxygen levels that really help to create the best coloration and health. So those are some of the tips I'm going to be talking about with coloration. Why am I bringing this up now? I want you to share what you think would be a good tip to give somebody who wanted to enhance the color in their fish. Go ahead and put it in the chat, because I might pull from what you say and use in the upcoming video. So, but I'm going to be elaborating on those 10 points in the upcoming video, so be sure to tune into that. And let's talk about some of the comments that were made in some prior videos. We had a gentleman named James Handy, Hande, James Handy. Abdul from India, hello my friend. Abdul from India. I love the international, those who are viewing internationally. James says, as for Janine from the UK, losing the nitrogen cycle, or anyone else, I don't think adding more fish would kill it. Instead, it would raise the ammonia level, and the beneficial bacteria will slowly grow to handle it. It might be possible that the filter media was rinsed in tap water containing chlorine, or maybe an additive or medicine added to the tank, possibly a pH swing. Is there a lot of plants in the tank? Did you do a complete gravel vacuum plus clean the filter at the same time? In any case, the addition of a dose from such a product that adds beneficial bacteria back into the tank should start showing results rather quickly. It is important to test the ammonia also, not just nitrites and nitrates. With zero ammonia, there will be no nitrites or nitrates to test for. Keep water, so that's before the cycle starts, right? Keep water changes to a minimum, keeping a close look at the ammonia levels as not to let that get so high as to kill the fish. Once a level of ammonia is recorded, nitrites would be soon to follow. Once nitrites are present, then test for nitrates and perform water changes to keep those in check. So I think what's happening is when people are cycling their tanks, they're messing around too much. They're not letting the cycle just go through the cycle. They're doing big water changes, and they're doing a lot, they're messing around with it a lot. And his point is monitor it and just let it do the cycle. Let it go through the cycle, because if you get in there while you're cycling and do some big cleaning, let's say, you're going to restart the whole thing again, and you're going to have some trouble. So good points. Thank you for that, James. And Christopher Martin, where can I get a cup, Ben? Christopher Martin was asking about one of these cups. And this is the channel cup. It helps support the channel and my obsession. And he was asking about, there's a link underneath all my videos. It's a Teespring link. You can buy t-shirts, tank tops, and coffee cups there. So thank you, Christopher, for asking about that. Mark Butcher, hi Ben, Mark from Michigan. I have a 40-gallon bow front. Wondering what you would recommend for a filter. I'm planning on 8-ish small cichlids. 32 wide, 24 tall, 13 deep. I have a Marineland 200 bio wheel. Not sure if that's appropriate. Yeah, I would give you the same advice I gave earlier. I would consider both a canister and an HOB, only because you can alternate servicing. Depending how low you run your water change, you can let one run while you're doing your, let them run while you're doing your water changes. It just kind of creates a little bit more stability. I think one of the problems that we run into, especially when you hear about big die-offs, is that people shock their tank with something that messes up the stability. They do a deep gravel vacuum, they service their canisters or they service their filters, and they do a water change all at once, and it's too much. It kills off too much bacteria. They have an ammonia spike, and they have a die-off. So if you can have a redundancy also, because if one filter dies off, needs to get apart or needs to get repaired, you have the other one running. And so you have this backup. I think that's a really good idea. So I would consider hang on back and a canister or 2 canisters and maybe a power head. So there's different ways you can go on that. 40 gallons is not that big, but I like to think in terms of upgrading, and down the road, you're probably going to get a bigger tank as your 8-ish cichlids, which will probably turn into 10 or 12-ish as those numbers increase and they get bigger. Nitani fins, looking for some advice. I have a 125 gallon, but my 2 canister filter intake tubes only go halfway down the back. Trying to figure out how to get more crud off the bottom to go to the tubes. Should I move a power head to the bottom to push over the substrate? Yeah. I think your question includes an answer. Position a power head. You can put it behind some rocks or behind some artificial plants so it's hidden, and get that power head pointed towards the intakes, and it should sweep some of the gunk over. You can run it 24/7, like I'm doing here with this one by here, the high door, or put it on a timer, run it maybe between 6 and 10 hours a day, and then have it off at night so the fish have a little bit of peace at night. That would be my advice. So I think you figured that one out already. Fishman Marcus. Fishman Marcus said, he just made a comment. This is not a question. He just said, when you're at work and act like you have to use the restroom to watch Coffee and Cichlids. Oh my God. Thank you, Fishman Marcus. I appreciate the loyalty to the channel. Just don't get fired, please. Hey, why are you taking so long in there, buddy? Come on. I'll be right out. Upset stomach. Vitek Kumbar, can you talk about sump for African cichlids? There's a video that I released about a week ago. I don't know, Candi, if you could pull up that link. I don't know if you can do that easily, but there's a full breakdown on my sump from beginning to end. There's a full breakdown on the sump. So please watch that video. I could talk for 30 minutes right now. It's in the video, and I break down every component of the sump and talk about why I did it that way. My sump is not the world's best sump. It's not the most ideal. There are modern designs that some people might consider superior, that use things like socks that you can rinse out every week. There are perhaps some better, more modern designs, but mine works for me. Thank you, Candi. I noticed Candi's putting up the link. Thank you so much, Candi. Candi is like the bomb. She's like, man, oh man. Okay, Colt Hahn. Hey, Ben, have you ever heard of Mr. Kevin Novak, or Dr. Kevin Novak's anoxic biocenosis clarification baskets, or even just deep sand beds to actually complete the nitrogen cycle? Yes, I have heard of that. I know in the salt community they have very deep sand beds because the anaerobic bacteria that lives at the bottom of that sand bed is the type that would consume nitrates. And if any of you out there are doing that, if any of you out there have been able to get the holy grail of cycle, which means that you have a tank that goes full cycle. It has the ammonia, goes to the nitrites, goes to the nitrates, and then you have the anaerobic bacteria consuming the nitrates. If you have that going on, I'd love to hear how you're doing it, and because that is really something. The plants, algae scrubbers, those are all, they all consume nitrates. And I noticed the eye biter is going after the Venusus again. You know, he's already subdued eye biter, so back off already. I may have to pull that eye biter out of there, and I will do that. I'll throw him in the sump for a while. And Sean, and I hope you're listening, eye biter. I hope you're tuned in. Sean Barwell, oh, actually Francie Arroyo. What do you keep in a 5-gallon? I mentioned a 5-gallon tank in the last video. That is a tank that I will set up immediately if I need to get a fish into quarantine right away, or if I have a fish that's being a jerk. And I think the one I have is a 10-gallon, actually. It's one of those little API, has a built-in filter that hangs inside of it, and I got a little heater about this big that's preset, and the whole thing was about $50. And so I can put it into use right away for quarantine, quarantine purposes, or to isolate or give a timeout to a fish, like an eye biter. Sean Barwell, do you use BioHome media? Have you found that they reduce nitrates? I use BioHome. I like it. It's remained, the integrity of the media has stayed solid for 4 years. It's in the baskets in my 60-gallon. I don't use the recommended amount of BioHome that Great Wave Engineering or that Richard Threw recommends, the Pond Guru. He recommends a certain amount of BioHome to be able to get that full cycle. It is a very, very large amount of BioHome. It's based on gallons, and a certain number of pounds for every like 15 gallons. You need a pound of BioHome. I mean, or a kilo of BioHome. It gets really, really into a lot of media. So no, I have not been able to get full cycle with BioHome. There are some videos on YouTube that talk about how they're able to get the full cycle using it. Sean Barwell, do you use BioHome? I hope that answered your question, Sean. Andrea's Herbal and Things. With HOB filters, the manufacturer says to change the filter every 30 days. I usually change mine every 90 days. It just seems better as far as beneficial bacteria. Well, first of all, there should be something reusable in your hang-on back that you can rinse in tank water that wouldn't necessarily kill off the beneficial bacteria, or at least not a drastic amount. So it's not like you're going to be killing off beneficial bacteria with every HOB servicing. You shouldn't be. There should be something in there, like a sponge or a cartridge, that is simply rinsed in tank water and put back in. I don't follow the recommendations on the HOB manufacturers usually, because I DIY the media. Like in my Marineland BioWheel, I bought plastic inserts. I put pinky floss in them, and then I drop them in. Now your hang-on back filter will tell you when you need to service it. And it'll tell you because you'll start to get overflow. Your hang-on back has channels that overflow. When the water can't pass through the media fast enough, it'll revert or redirect the water into overflow channels. You'll see that it'll drip down near the intake tube when it shouldn't be dripping down there, right? It should be coming down through the output area. So when you see that area dripping, or you see water coming through the overflow channels in your HOB, that's time to do a service. That's what I do, because that means that my media is getting blocked. So so yeah, to answer your question, yes, I don't do every 30 days or every 60 days. I do it when I see that overflow channel dripping. That's when I go. Shadow Runner, API Furon 2 kills beneficial bacteria. Does it kill beneficial bacteria? How to dose it? My goldfish is rubbing on the glass, swimming towards the wave maker. Is it a fluke? Is it something going on? I asked that question of Corey. Corey at the Aquarium Co-op, somebody I respect and who knows a lot more about fish keeping than I do. And I asked him specifically, when treating a tank, should we worry about a beneficial bacteria die-off? And his answer was no. He's never seen a situation where the medicating of a tank resulted in a beneficial bacteria die-off, which would be indicated by a spike in ammonia. He just said he's never seen it. So I don't think you have anything to worry about there. How do you dose it? Read the package labeling and follow it exactly. That's my advice. Understand the instructions and follow it exactly, with emphasis on making sure you remove all chemical filtration when dosing. Your Chemipure, your Purigen, your charcoal, get those out of there when you're dosing. When you're done dosing, put them back in. If it's charcoal, put it back in for a few weeks, then pull it out and toss it because it's absorbed the residual medication. If it's Purigen, things that you can recharge, go ahead and recharge them, put them back in. Chemipure, I think you toss after you use it. Shadowrunner, let me see. I hope that answered your question, Shadowrunner. And Matman, like Batman, but Matman. B, cycling a tank is basically building up an immune system to ammonia, and you got to let it naturally do its thing. Yeah, you know, Matman, you're getting back to the comment that I read originally from James Handy, and you're right. I think we interfere too much when we're trying to cycle a tank. There's some great graphics you can get on the internet that show you the cycle, right? Ammonia going up and then dying down. As it dies down, about halfway down on the graph, you'll see nitrite come up, and then then halfway down, you'll see nitrates come up. It's about a month. It's about 30 days of just leave it alone, let it do its thing, let the bacteria populate, and it's a natural process, and it will run its course, and so that's good, Matt. Duke City Aquariums. I cycle a new aquarium just by adding a couple of fish and a bottle of Zyme 7. Duke City, if that's worked for you, that's great. I've heard some people have had great results with things like that. I think Fritz has a turbo boost product, and so there's a lot of good products out there. But then again, here we go. Sean Barwell. Sean Barwell says, I don't really trust the bottled bacteria. It seemed to create a false cycle. That's interesting. A false cycle. So I've used them. I've used the I've used Sechem, the Sechem stability product, and I've had good results. But that being said, I've also pulled out disgusting filter media from one of the canisters and put it into the tank I was cycling. So I don't think there's a better way to jumpstart a tank than finding a fellow fish keeper who has a healthy tank and saying, hey buddy, can I have one of the sponges? Or do you have an established tank sponge filter, a spare? Throw it into the tank and you will have pretty much an instantly cycled tank. So I hope that answered some of the questions from last week. This week's questions, I noticed that a lot of them were streaming, and I haven't really. I will get to the ones that I missed this week next week, and I see some of them here. Jerry, you thought that was hilarious. I'm glad. Okay, so we're at the 1 hour mark. Last week I just got carried away and went an hour and a half, and I started to lose my voice, and I don't want to do that. I still have to clean all my tanks. I have to do a couple videos, and so I need my voice. And so I want to thank you folks for sitting in and on this live chat, this live stream. I want to thank Kevin and Denny, and I want to thank the amazing Candi for their moderating, and all of you who sat in. Thank you so much. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. Thank you to those of you who super chatted, and I will give you a shout out in next week's live stream. I'll try and do these on Saturdays if you like them. I'll try and keep doing them as we get into the holidays, and I have family visiting. I have 4 kids and a big family. As they start to visit, there may be a few Saturdays that I miss, but I'll keep them going. If you like them, I'll keep them going. Thank you so much, everybody. And Jerry, thank you for that. I appreciate that, okay? And that's all for me. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.